Hey, it's Corey here from Fuel Your Photos, and I just wanted to take a second to address a question that I commonly hear from photographers. Now, the question is whether or not they can be listed with Google My Business without using a physical address. And typically this question comes up because photographers are worried about listing their home address, which also happens to be their business address, publicly for anyone to see on the internet. And there are some legitimate concerns. I mean, photographers have a lot of very expensive equipment, and you might not want to display everywhere that this is my house, come rob me. And you might have less paranoid concerns about clients who see your address online and decide to mail a check or just show up, and that wasn't actually the right place for them to do that. So there are plenty of concerns that are completely valid, and the answer to the question is yes, you can be listed in Google My Business without using your physical address. And the way that you do that is by selecting a service area. Now, you will still need to verify your address. So you'll have to include your address whenever you set up your account or your listing. They'll send you a postcard, you put in the PIN number, and your address will be verified. And at that point, you can follow the directions that you're seeing on the screen about service area businesses on Google. You can just Google that if you want to find these instructions again. And you basically check the box that says, I deliver goods and services to my customers at their location. Now let me show you an example of what that looks like. Whenever you choose a service area, you will be showing in a general area like you see here on this map. Now I just randomly picked a couple of photographers to show you the difference. Here's one that uses a service area. Now if you choose to use your address, you will see a map pin, and if you have street view, a shot of the outside from street view, and the address will be listed here. Now, you know that you can do this. You can choose a service area and hide your address so that the public cannot see it. But the question is whether or not you should do this. At least that's the question that I want to answer for you now. But before I answer that question from an SEO perspective, just want to give a little bit of practical advice for you. If your business is your name, then pretty much anyone who wants to find your address can probably do it on the internet. If you have any property that is registered in your name, or even if you're renting with your name, there are records online that will allow people to find the address of pretty much anyone. Now, it might be a little bit harder for some people, and maybe you have gone to great efforts to make that impossible, and if that's the case, then by all means, keep on hiding your address. But if your address is already readily accessible on other sites or in other sources, then what difference does it really make if it shows up in a Google search? So that's one thing. Sometimes I'll see people who will actually have their full address listed on Facebook, but then they're still afraid to put it on Google. Or maybe they have their full address listed on one of these other sites like Yellow Pages or Yelp, and they won't put it on their Google My Business listing. And I just want to ask those people, why not? Because it's already out there. So if your address is already out there, then I would strongly urge you to include it on your Google My Business listing. If you're already protecting your address very, very carefully, then I would say, go ahead. If it's something that's important to you, then go ahead and choose a service area. But let's look at the data from an SEO perspective. Does hiding your address actually affect your chances of ranking for local photography terms? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at 10 different examples. I'm not going to look at each one in depth, but I'm just going to kind of flip through them here. You can see we had Atlanta, Columbia, which is where I live, Los Angeles, Chicago, Charleston, Houston, Charlotte, Denver, Orlando, and Kansas City. And you can see the ones that have an address listed have the directions, and the ones that don't have just the website. So you can see quickly again the ones that do and the ones that don't. Now, out of this random sampling of 10 cities, I found that 77% of the ones that ended up in the map pack on this first page and the top 3 results on the map had an address listed. They included the full address and they made it publicly visible. 77%. Now, I would say that that number holds fairly true across the board. It could be as low as 70%, and in some cases you may see it's as high as 80 or even 90%. It really depends on the sample size that you take and the variety of cities that you look at and the type of photography that you're searching for and the keywords that you use. It can really vary. But I will tell you that especially whenever the term is competitive, and especially when we're talking about wedding photographers, that including your address so that it is publicly visible is going to make it more likely for you to show up in the first 3 results in the map pack, which will make you show up on the first page of Google for these local terms. Now, if after looking at all that data, I saw that it was about 50-50 or even 60-40, I would say, just choose what works for you and it'll probably work out okay. But the truth is that in looking at the data, I have found that it's nowhere close to that. It's actually closer to 80-20 in most cases, 80% being people who have listed a physical address and made it visible are the ones who are showing up in the map pack, in the first 3 results in the map pack. So from an SEO perspective, looking at the data, my advice to you is, if at all possible, include a full physical address and make it publicly visible. Now, we could go into even more details about proximity to city center or industry center and other factors that go into getting you to the top results on the map pack. But right now, I just wanted to take a quick look at the data and see if there was any correlation. Now, I can't guarantee that this is a causation, but I can tell you that the correlation is very strong. Whenever we see 80% or even close to 80%, we know that there's something going on. And so what I'm telling you is that I believe personally, by looking at the data, that including your address will make it more likely for you to show up on the first page of Google in the map pack in the first 3 results. All right, good luck. I hope you'll do whatever makes sense to you, but now you can make an educated decision after looking at the data.